And when I was being introduced to this other person, he said that meet Aakrit. He's the founder of Haptik AI. They tried to build ChatGPT 10 years back. And in 10 years, this founder has seen more than any founder I know has seen.
Wow.
We built an app that's a chatbot that can be anybody's personal assistant.
Why do you pivot out of that?
10 years too early. The idea of putting a Jarvis in every single person's hand that actually does the job really excites me.
How does it feel to actually have a $100 million exit? How do you sell a company for $100 million? Paint the picture for me.
They often say that any relationship, the foundation is important. Any startup, the founding team is important. Any sale, the core motivation is important.
Welcome to yet another episode of OnePlus Open Conversations. Today, I have Aakrit Vaish, who was one of my old investors. He had invested in my last company. But the cool thing about Aakrit is the entire AI wave that's going on now, Aakrit tried to build that 10 years ago. But more importantly, Aakrit's built a SaaS company, which is a software as a service company. Basically, he sold software to other companies. In India, it's very, very rare to build and sell SaaS to India. Aakrit's done that, and he sold his last company to Reliance Jio for $100 million. Today is going to be an absolute masterclass. In this masterclass, we're going to learn step by step, how do you sell a company for $100 million? If you are worried about AI, what should you do? If you are a product manager or a software engineer, how is your role going to evolve over the next few years? And most importantly, we are going to learn where the opportunities are, how venture capital is going to evolve, because Aakrit's an investor himself. We're going to learn all of these wonderful things in today's episode. So once again, I welcome you to OnePlus Open Conversations. So Aakrit, this is a picture of you.
Oh, that's like me yesterday. Or last week rather, when I was in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. Same. No difference.
I'll tell you the difference. The difference is your jawline. You probably lost quite a bit of weight. You look older here than here.
Oh my God, you're really being sweet to me today, man.
No, I'm not being sweet.
This is your way of welcoming and
this is the
getting
truth.
Guests warmed up on your pod.
This is the truth. So, Aakrit, firstly, how does it feel to actually have a $100 million exit? What's the path? What's the journey from, your perspective?
After a few days, the number just remains just that, which is a number. I think most founders will tell you that it's not something you ever think about maybe a few days after the deal is closed and the release is out and the party is over. It's back down to doing what you do best day to day, which is get back to work. In terms of the journey, there was somebody a couple of weeks back who was introducing me to another person, and this person who was making the introduction has known me for a long time and has been close to me in many ways. And when I was being introduced to this other person, he said that meet Aakrit. He's the founder of Haptik AI. They tried to build ChatGPT 10 years back. And in 10 years, this founder has seen more than any founder I know has seen. And the fundamental learning or the big headline that should accompany that is 10 years too early.
10 years too early. But tell me this story. I know you went to the Valley once, you were employed, and then there was some big shift in your life. What was it?
Look, I always wanted to run a business.
Is it because your parents were?
Yeah. So grew up in a business household, the only child. So that just basically is what I grew up around. It felt like the only way of life, to be honest. People want to become cricketers. People want to become artists. People want to make a lot of money. I just wanted to run my business. Like that was always the idea. After college, when I moved to San Francisco, I moved for consulting, not knowing, what the hell I'm going to do.
Can you explain consulting for the audience?
I was doing technology consulting. The formal way to explain it is that for large companies looking to implement and integrate technology within their business processes, so implement software, think about how to digitize their business.
This is at a time where digitization wasn't a thing.
2008-9. So it was just starting out. I mean, midpoint of kind of getting there. But everybody was in the zone of we have to become digital. So that's what I did. But that turning point was within a few months, I realized this is not my calling. It was not too long. I think within 2 or 3 months, I realized. And I'm not referring to consulting. I'm referring to being in a job. I think because I grew up in that environment. I went to college at UFI, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. which is a very entrepreneurial university of its own. YouTube came out of it. PayPal Mafia, a large part is from there, and many other companies. So just within a few months of working, I realized just being in a job structure, corporate setup is not really what I want to do. But luckily, I found myself in San Francisco.
Interesting. What led to the birth of Haptik?
So I was in San Francisco, and I figured that I want to run my own business. That's clear. While I'm here, this tech thing feels interesting. Big thing everybody will tell you, most founders and most somewhat successful people, timing matters a lot of where you are and what you're doing. I happened to find myself in San Francisco in 2008 and 9 when the App Store just launched. The iPhone App Store, that is, not the GPT store that launched last week. The iPhone App Store.
It's almost like you're seeing the same old thing again and again. Like companies at that point want a tech consultancy. Now they want AI consultancy, new app stores born. So it's almost like, but this time you have so much more experience and capital to redo it.
Yeah. And that time when, the App Store was blowing up, so I said that, look, this mobile app thing seems interesting. So I basically decided to join a company, early stage startup, with the idea that let me learn how to build a business. And what the company was doing was we were providing analytics software to other app developers. And a bunch of our customers ended up being messaging apps. And I don't think I've ever told you this. A lot of people know that. But one of those customers back in 2010 was WhatsApp. So being on the inside of the company, week on week, I was seeing messaging just blow up. This is 2010. And there were 9 other apps like WhatsApp at that time, by the way, and all of them had similar engagement rates. WeChat is one popular one that we know, but there was many others.
Yeah.
I said, this is insane, right? The kind of engagement that's blowing up. And that idea just came to me that, look, if there's so much engagement on messaging when it comes to peer-to-peer, there have to be business solutions built for this over that next decade. And that's what germinated the idea of Haptik.
And did you go out and raise money for it?
Yeah.
Immediately, or did you take some time, build out the product?
This is 2012-13. We are right now in Bangalore, where I'm just coming from Indiranagar, where you hop a block in a street and there's a VC fund lining up to give you money even as an early stage, first-time founder.
Even back then?
Back then it wasn't the case. That's what I'm saying. That this is what you're talking about is very different. 12-13, the process was very different. You didn't make a deck and said, now I'm going to go find an investor. You made a deck and said, okay, listen, how am I going to build an alpha? Right? Where am I going to get like my 100K from to build this out? Luckily, we had savings, both of us. So we invested some of our capital, built the first version of the product out, and raised capital, I think, about 9 months in.
How much did you raise?
$1 million, 1.1.
Interesting.
Which was, by the way, a fairly large round that time.
Back then, yeah.
Just for a 9-month-old, almost product company, it was like, oh my God, why do you need so much money?
And what did you build first?
It'll sound familiar. We built an app that's a chatbot that can be anybody's personal assistant.
Wow. Interesting. Why do you pivot out of that?
10 years too early.
Tell me a little bit about that timing. Like, I think this is something I learned myself, I think in the last couple of years, right? Timing is everything with a startup. There's just things where you can jump on the bandwagon when the inflection point is just going up, and you can reap all the benefits of that industry just blowing up and the consumer behavior changing. Did you think timing back then, or were you just like, this is something I really want to build?
Young, mid-20s. And sometimes I feel that's how founders should be. Don't think about all of these things so much. But sometimes I also think that the best founders make those smarter decisions. So short answer is absolutely not. We weren't thinking timing. We weren't thinking market size. We weren't thinking EBITDA, cash flow, cap. We were just really excited about the problem. And to be honest with you, I still am. Right? Even till date, the idea of putting a Jarvis in every single person's hand that actually does the job really excites me. Which is why, look, the last year, and I don't talk about this often, and that's why when you called me about this, I said that, look, this might be a good way to finally be a little open and talk about it. Just imagine when ChatGPT came out and when I first got my hands on it, like, oh my God, like there were parts of my body that were trembling, right? Because when we started out, that was all. We just wanted to get this out. We just wanted 100 people to say, I love this.
Interesting. And it's so strange, right? Like, it's 9.9 out of 10 people who'd have a $100 million exit would be in Hawaii sipping, I don't know, coffee, let's say. But you're here.
My ties.
Yeah, you're here. You're not settling. You're never settling in a way. and you're sitting here and you still want to build the next thing. You still want to power the next thing. Where does that come from? Is that DNA, or is it something where you've done it for 10 years so you can't stop?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I'll give you my version of it. I think it all comes from that desire or ambition as a kid, right? Like it was always, this is always...
Did your parents install that in you, or is it just like you consumed that kind of media on TV or whatever?
I think it was surroundings, upbringing, peer group. I got fascinated by sports very early. Even till date, like literally the only thing I would save my 2 hours in a day for is watching a great sports game. If there are 3 or 4 sports that I'm a big fan of, I wouldn't trade that for anything else. That competitiveness was always there. Like I love the idea of being a winner. And because running a business became my passion, it just is what I've always wanted to do.
You just became extremely competitive about it.
And it's just what I've always wanted to do, right? Like I joke about this, that if somebody told me that my passion was at one point to become an artist and paint, maybe that's all I would do for the rest of my life. So which is when you ask me about the number, about the money and number, it's like a point system. It's like that sports analogy. It doesn't
you
really
achieve a score, it doesn't mean anything. It's the outcome of something that you've done.
But there's so much more to achieve, no? I'm saying, and the good and sometimes the bad part about this game you're playing is there's an infinite leaderboard. It never is going to end. So it's a question of you have to at some point decide for yourself. But too early in life to try to think about those things right now.
Back to Haptik. So your personal assistant didn't work out. You pivoted. Where do you find PMF? Where do you find product market fit? Where did the customer start paying money? What did you build that the customer started paying money for?
So, it was very interesting. Goes back to the earlier point. I was so obsessed by this personal assistant idea that I kept going at it. We raised more and more money. Fortunately, I think even back then, I think, I'd like to think I was good at raising capital. Like, this, I also invest now, right? I don't think I'd invest in me as a business, but I think I was good at convincing people that something will come out of it. So we kept raising capital. A few years in, most people in the company saw that this is not really going to work. And at the same time, there was a parallel set of companies emerging, which was the B2B version of what we did. Give me a white label personal assistant, which is these chatbots that you now see on your web app and WhatsApp. This was happening. This was real time happening. There were companies emerging globally in India. And, my team and those around me kept telling us that you should do this now. I was literally the last man standing, saying, we're not going to do it. I don't want to do it. There's still some legs. Let's try this. We did side topic, but we built 2 other apps, by the way, on the side, right? Which nobody knows about because we released them for 7 days only. One of them was called Rambo because we thought that let's give this personal assistant a character. So we did all of that, right? I was literally the person standing to say, we're not going to go down this road. We're not going to become just another software company. So here's what happened basically. Because our personal assistant became somewhat large enough, there was a lot of the brand managers and CXOs who were using our app. So a couple of them came on our website and filled the form saying, I want to talk to a founder of this app. I want a white label version for my company.
So your consumer product made no money but built a brand which you utilized to sell B2B products.
Absolutely. Spot on.
Interesting.
Right? And you have summarized this really well. I didn't understand what was going on that time in this way. I just thought that some people are reaching out to us. And by the way, here's a funny anecdote. The first 2 or 3, the team came to me and said, somebody from very, very large enterprise has reached out. I'm not going to talk to them. We're not going to do it. Like knocking on your door, preparing to pay you $30,000-$40,000. But one day, somebody called me, a really large FMCG brand, and they said that we found out about you. We are in Mumbai next week. The head of jitna bhi head laga lo is coming and he wants to really meet you. I said, okay, look, this I have to take and I have to go meet. If nothing else, I'll try and find a monetization angle for my app. And that's when it sort of started.
Interesting. Tell me about the exit. Like, how did that process happen? How does it happen? How do you sell a company for $100 million? How many conversations is it? Do you talk to multiple people? Like, paint the picture for me.
Okay, let's start with the basics, right? So I think the first bit, they often say that any relationship, the foundation is important. Any startup, the founding team is important. Any sale, the core motivation is important. You, as a company and as a founder, you have to be very clear about why you want to do such a transaction and what's in it for you after this and what's in it for the person coming in. Those things just don't happen. It's in some cases they do. Like everybody talks about these infamous Instagram and WhatsApp acquisitions that they just happen. But if you look below the details, and there was a lot of recent leaks around this, there was a long process behind actually how it happened. There's a lot of thought that actually goes behind it. It just doesn't, it's not a case of like I just happened to meet somebody, right? So where I'm going with this is once we pivoted when the B2B business started scaling, we thought that there's something here. But we also realized that if we want to really play this AI game at scale, we have to find a different way to do this. And we started looking for versions of capital. I was fairly clear, I don't think the classic venture model may work here because this is a very long game in this AI world, and that's what's proving out today. So we started thinking about what are our options. We had we had enough capital in the bank, so that luxury was there. And we said that, look, I think I'm going to be open to strategic options, but I made a list and there were only 6 companies on that list. These are the only 6 companies where I think something strategic we'd be open to. And Jio was one of them. Why were they one of them? This was 1918. Telco was killing it and they had just started thinking about what their internet software conglomerate play looks like. We had some hints in terms of what's going on. They had just bought this company called Savan. That time.
The music one.
And it almost felt to me like this would be a win-win where they would be looking for a technology or a partner like this. And for us, it will give us that platform to really scale. And then after that, I think I remember telling you this once upon a time, it's an enterprise sale. So you map out how you're going to get in touch with the right folks for all 6 companies, by the way, right?
So you did this cold?
No, it's an enterprise sale, right?
No,
so
in the sense your first conversation it wasn't like an accidental conversation. It's like you had a plan in mind.
I had a plan in mind. And the plan was to map out who the right folks are. And also the plan was to go in, not saying that that's what you want, but to go in and say, we want you as a customer.
Paint step 1. You met somebody, let's say at a party, or you got their WhatsApp number, you start chatting with them.
No, step 1 was mapping out who the right people.
Okay, you mapped out all the right people. Step 2 was, okay.
At all the 6 companies.
So you started reaching out to each one of them one by one. You send them a WhatsApp message?
Referral. Like I said, enterprise sale, right? Enterprise sale, if you're selling SaaS to enterprises, 100, 200K plus, you're not going to cold call. Cold call is going to be like, there's 100 people to reach out to you, right? You're going to find more creative ways to do that.
So you ask some powerful networker, either your investor or somebody you know, to give you an intro. Okay, then you got the intros. Then you went, did a meeting with them, did a presentation saying, hey, here's why you should use Haptik as a customer. And then how did that conversation pivot from customer to buyer? Let's think about you buying the company.
So this is where I had enough confidence and intuition that I think once we map out the right folks and we speak to them at the strategic customer level, they would be interested in doing something more. And 1 or 2 of them would come to the table to say, and ask the question at least, what are your strategic plans?
You waited for them to tell you, hey, maybe this is something interesting. We'd like to, probably buy this.
Correct. And what happened in the case of my ultimate investor and buyer is that we didn't even have to wait for the meeting for them to ask the question. So what happened is the person who made the introduction, they got back to that person saying, look, I want to meet them, but only if they're interested in doing this. So it worked out fortunately for us that the context of the meeting got set up even before that. And so then we got the question asked back again that, look, they're open to meeting you, but only if you're interested in a strategic opportunity.
And roughly how much revenue do you need to have? Maybe you don't want to reveal yours, but in general, how much revenue do you need to have for a Jio to open their purse into 100 mil?
Look, this is where things are very, very different, right? There are 3 types of M&As that typically happen. Distress sale, where typically you're looking to buy the team, merge them into the team and see what happens. Second is business-based sale, where you look at basically, okay, look, here's the revenue, here's a multiple, and now the idea is this can become 10x, I'll get my cash flow after 7 years. The third is, which we fall in the category of, is the product, technology, and the vision sale, which is basically saying that, look, there's something interesting here. There's a great team, there's traction, there's a solid product. So Instagram YouTube, WhatsApp would also fall in that
So
category.
they're betting on the potential of.
Yeah, they're betting on basically how large it can become, and more importantly, it's timing. I need to do it today, right? I need this now. I can't wait another few months or a year. It's also a little bit of somebody else may get it, and that creates more issues for us. It's also a little bit of these guys could themselves get there, so why lose out? So we fell in that category. Now, once you're in that category, then it's art, then the math, then it's not revenue or multiples.
And how long did that process take? From I know I'm getting very deep into this, but I think this is like as we were chatting, this feels like this is a masterclass. Like nobody knows the internals of how 1,000 crore exit happens. So I think that last piece of somebody just signing the papers and the money being wired, how long does that take? I'm sure it was in tranches and stuff, and it was more complicated. But what's the end date where you knew, okay, I'm done?
In this third type of transaction where you're really betting on the future. So there's a couple of things, right? So first I want to caveat one thing, and goes back to, again, the similar examples of using whether it's Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp. In all those cases, all the founders stayed on for a long time after that to continue building. So even today, right, it's been a while, and there's often this question I get asked that what's kind of the idea, why you here? And I was just answering right before this, right? I'm still very much in this to build, because there's so much more to build, and I have the best platform available today with the kind of partner that I have. So the first bit was my investor or the buyer looking in eye to eye and really getting that from me, that you're going to build this with me. This is not an exit, this is a start. Once that alignment happens, it's almost like, and that you cannot fake.
That you really want to have to do.
Yes, that you cannot, that anybody will catch. Any smart, large company, especially the likes of Reliance, will know when they talk to you. Are these guys missionaries? Sure, at some point they may want to do something else in life. We're not debating that, right? Are they going to be for 20 years? No, right? But they're in this to build. And if we don't succeed, that's fine. Nobody's going to complain. But
you need to know motivation. So it's strange that even at 1,000 crores, what companies are looking for is still the motivation of the founders coming in.
Because that's the type of sale we were in. If this was a business-based sale, where it was a multiple of revenue growth, then it's less. Then it matters lesser, right? Then at that point, the business it's good on its own. And in that case, honestly, sometimes it's reverse, where actually then investors and buyers want professionals to run it. If it was a distressed sale, very different. Then you're looking at it as an employee. Then basically they're looking at you and saying that, look, where do I fit this guy in? But because ours was this, that's where the multiple went out, right? So I don't even want to talk about the revenue because it doesn't matter.
Okay. So now this is the only question about the past in the entire thing. And there's a reason for it, okay? I wanted to make this all about the future. I want to make this about AI. You've been around for a long time. You've seen all the versions of AI that could have been but never were. But the question I have is, you've been doing chatbots. And the OG version of chatbots, at least a few years ago, was the dialogue flow version, which to the audience is, I ask a question, then the thing will respond with the menu, choose from one of these 4 options, then I choose one of those 4 options, and then it says, okay, here's the next step. So it's almost like there's a tree, right? And you go through one of those conversation paths. But now we have generative AI. We have something that can talk to you like a human being. What do you think is going to happen to the behaviors of users? Do they want these things? I'm just going to use the word assistants. Do people want assistants? I know OpenAI has put them out, but is that a gimmick, or do you think that's actually going to be a reality?
Okay, let's unpack your question a little more, right? So you're saying, do people want assistants? Yes, absolutely. But I do think that assistants are going to have their flavors. One of our big learnings coming out of Haptik V1, the personal assistant, was really what people want is actually search to be better.
That's an interesting insight. What does that mean?
Everyone wishes I could have my secretary version of assistant, like book me an appointment, do this, do that. But I actually don't think as many people want that. I think that's very limited to a very small segment of the society. And by the way, this holds true for the US as well. I think the larger world or population is very happy doing it themselves. And honestly, apps have done a great job at doing transactions and workflows, right? I think what people want is when they are curious about a topic or a question, or they want some information, links are not doing enough for them.
So if I had to rephrase that, it's like instead of Zomato saying, I will book the order for you, it's more like, sure, but you would prefer Zomato to tell you what I want to order.
Absolutely, right? So I think that discovery experience.
I know you pretty well, so I think you'll order butter chicken tonight. Something like that?
Simple, man. I mean, I was playing around this. I was asking the same thing the other day. I was trying to order food and I said, why can't I just ask a question that what are the healthy restaurants around me that have recently opened that have been rated well? That's literally my problem statement, nothing else. I want recently opened because I'm tired of ordering the same places. We spoke a little bit about health and we'll get to it. So Sunday evenings, usually I have no carbs, right? But I also don't feel like eating at home. And ratings matter to me. I just want 3 options. That's it. And then the transaction is fine. That's easy. Zomato's made it so simple to just transact. Even these days, the OTP is also automatic. Everything is so simple, right? So why would I want to tell somebody place an order for me? And I'm happy tracking it, happy looking at it. So I think that my take is opportunity for assistance lies there.
Funny question, right? Do you think there is going to be a version of a Make My Trip that is sitting on WhatsApp that might do better than Make My Trip? Or maybe even Make My Trip goes on WhatsApp. Because I find that very convenient, by the way. And I want to just ask this thing, where should I fly? What is the cost going to be? Thanks, book me tickets.
Everybody should answer this question in the same 2 lens of surface and UX. Just because mobile happened and mobile apps happened, not necessarily every type of use case and product or transaction was ripe for mobile apps. Even today, I don't know the numbers, but my assumption is that largely apparel, D2C, e-commerce is still very web driven and mobile is a good mix. But a food delivery and a cab booking is inverse. Like very anything on the web, you pretty much do the whole thing on mobile apps. Holiday planning, by the way, Make My Trip, Clear Trip, majorly again, a lot of web traffic because especially when you're booking like expensive
Through an
hotels.
agent.
No, also when you're booking expensive hotels, you know, what's a typical hotel booking behavior, right? You and your family sit down, discuss, you search, you look at each other, you make that plan. So a lot of it is at least again on web. So similarly is how I would think of these things. I wouldn't think of this as, at least when it comes to commerce and transactions, you should just think of this as surface and UX, which is wherever it makes sense. And the best way to discover it is again by doing it and experimenting and learning.
What happens to people in customer support? Because there's still a huge section of people that are sitting on the back end of these WhatsApp chats or on calls. They weren't too impacted by the last layer of, let's say, tree-based conversational systems. What happens now?
I've been asked this question now for the full decade, right? And for 9 years, my standard answer was the following. I'll answer what my answer was and how it changed. My standard answer was, what will happen with chatbots or AI to customer service is what happened with banks and ATM, which is that the most common reason in the 90s you would enter a bank was to take money out. You would stand in long lines, wait in long lines. It was a terrible experience. Tellers were frustrated. They didn't like their jobs. Just going to a bank was painful. When ATMs came, now going to a bank is actually a great experience. Not to wait in lines too long. There's enough space to sit, wait. The tellers still remain, but they've been upskilled. Now they're handling more complex things, ranging from, my checkbook is lost to I need to change my address to tell me fixed deposit schemes, and they're spending time with customers. And customers,
they're not doing the routine thing.
So for 9 years, that was my answer. That's what the answer of AI to customer service is, which is the people will remain, but they will just do a lot more interesting work for the consumers. And that means overall consumer experience will go up. Yeah, last year, but you got to just accept fundamentally that now even some of the more nuanced stuff, generative AI can do really, really, really well. And I do think now, the next few years, if I am a customer support agent or if I run a call center, if that's a field I work in, I'm upskilling myself right now. My job is going to be impacted.
It just feels like there's going to be such a fundamental shift. And, I had a question for you that would be further down the stack, but I want to bring it back up. Is how should college change now? It's not just this field, right? It's like 5, 10, 20 different fields that are starting to get impacted by this. Someone's going to college today to do something that you feel will be replaced by AI in 3-4 years, and college is still doing things the old way. Should that evolve? What are your thoughts there?
Segueing from the customer support question, the reason why I think that is we're going to see that impact sooner than later is because that's considered a cost center.
You lose money there.
So wherever you think that this is something I'm not investing in, but rather losing money on as a cost center, those are the things you start thinking about first. On the other hand, now let's take college for a second, right? College is an investment. Whether it's a parent, whether it's a child, it's an investment you're making into your future.
So people will still pay for college.
100%. And the nature of college will change what you do inside.
Do you think it'll
college.
change fast enough?
Absolutely. I think schools will change fast enough. They have to, right? But I don't think, the best colleges fees goes down. I don't think the premium professors or teachers
Will teach for lesser.
Or do any different work. They will just use these tools a lot more because that's an investment I'm making towards the future. And for me to change that behavior and say that, look, now I'm, a ChatGPT is going to teach me all the concepts, that's very far away.
It's strange because a lot of people, their first attack vector for AI is like, hey, college is still teaching old stuff.
You don't go to college to learn. You go to college to buy an insurance.
You have a degree, so you know that worst case scenario, maybe it's useful.
Degree, reputation, name, CV.
A girlfriend,
popularity contest, everything, right?
Who was the last? Go for the Three Idiots experience.
But you're not Rancho, right? You're not there building rockets and most people are not, at least. Most people are going for checking the boxes of life off, right? And so no matter what you do, I still want that. And by the way, you know what? Even better, now I'll want those check marks, and on the side, I'll learn from ChatGPT because that's much easier.
So now I want to talk about software as a service. I've done a few stints in software as a service. I've done it multiple times. I've noticed a difference between when I did it like 4-5 years ago and very recently, which is that I think something is changing in software. Okay. The most recent experience I had, we built like these 3 tools. We built them as experiments. We built one called Alpha CTR, which is a fine-tuned model for YouTube thumbnails. Then we put ChatGPT on WhatsApp. We were just playing around. Then we tried.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
God, right? What was it called?
God in a Box.
God in a Box.
Yeah, it's just the most random name we came up with.
I know.
And then we did one more called AutoCode Pro, which is text to code. But I have a question here, okay? The question we are seeing, or the thing we are seeing is, a DALL-E 3 that comes out tomorrow is going to be far cheaper than whatever I produce. Because they've raised 100 mil, they can afford to be cheap. And when they put it on Bing, it's free. Right? Same with ChatGPT. For a long time, GPT 3.5, it was still paid. Today, you can get it on the phone for free. I've started to learn that your competitors can stay free longer than you can stay solvent. And they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, some in the billions. And I also have seen that the way a senior sales rep uses a CRM, which is a customer relationship management platform, and the way a junior rep uses it is very different. The junior rep will go and manually type in whatever, aaj ye deal aaya, itna price hai. A senior person will tell the junior guy, or will tell his assistant, today this deal came, update it. And I feel like everyone wants that. My thesis on software is that it's not true for all software, but software as a service and small generic niches of software as a service, either the gaps are done. Somebody's already won that and they're going to put AI in their thing. Or somebody's come and they've raised $1 billion. Now the price to play is 100 million, $1 billion. And you got to stay free for 10 years to dry out everybody else. Am I being overly pessimistic?
I think you're hitting upon a lot of very valid points, and there's a lot of just overall thought being going around this in the ecosystem for the last few years. Let's break this up, okay? So let's talk about a few things. So first, one trend that's happening is, which is related, unrelated. Over the last 10-15 years, too much software got built. There was an over-sassification, if that's a word. Way too much.
Because it felt like a low barrier to entry.
Low barrier to entry. Everybody wanted to do SaaS. You had the first wave of SaaS that killed it on the public market. So everybody thought they could do it. Spreadsheet to software was becoming easy. Cloud wave. Enterprises, CIOs were everything cloud. They kept thinking they felt specialists are great. We'll bring in one software for the CFO, one software for the CHRO, one software for the CMO. We'll keep doing this. And suddenly, in the sort of liquidity crunch of the last 2 years, when everybody woke up, they're like, oh my God, I'm using 36 software in my company. What am I using this for?
And I'm spending $100,000 on each of them.
So then you start asking the questions. Then you started asking the questions that first on ROI. And then the bigger question that got asked is, why can't this software do this as well? This software also has these features, right? So why are we using 2 things? Then the third question got asked. We're using 36 things. Do they talk to each other? No. Everything is data is all over the place. So the first big trend that's happening is bundling of software.
Which companies like Zoho have done pretty well.
Zoho is absolutely the rock star at it, right? Freshworks, of course, is doing a lot of it. Honestly, the next version of what we are imagining Haptik also to be is a little bit of that. Right? We want to bundle in a lot of different capabilities. So that's one big trend we are seeing everywhere, which is linked to what you were saying, right? Like, so if you build a very point solution tool, particularly the enterprise, it's not going to find much takers. You have to have a larger problem statement to solve. The second thing that's going on is because of AI and because of the low barriers to entry in SaaS in general, what's becoming more and more important is vertical depth. You just can't build any other tool now. In fact, I was just having this conversation with somebody right before coming here, which was, even as an investor now, I'm shifting the way I think about founding teams. A few years back, it was like, okay, look, let's find a great technologist, a great product manager who can build an amazing product, and we'll figure out how to package it and sell it. Now it's different. Let's say I'm looking for somebody who understands a domain really, really well and who has somewhat of a product or tech person with him or her.
It's interesting you use the word somewhat of a tech person. It's like you're an investor as well. So for most people that don't know, Aakrit invests through an entity called PureCheck. When you say somewhat, it's strange because VCs have always said that there needs to be a solid tech person, like 10 years of experience or whatever. Even if it's young, it needs to have hacker mentality. The somewhat word is very strange.
I'm talking about where I typically come in, which is inception stage. I'll say by what I mean somewhat. Somewhat means there's a domain expert who says, I have this friend who's very good, but he or she is not on board yet. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with taking that risk to say that half-time person will build the first version of the product, and then a later stage investor will come in, at which point we'll be able to afford that person.
Wow, that is...
I'm also okay to say that, look, I'm working with, a third-party entity to build this out initially, prototype it, but I know this problem so well, I'll do it. At this stage, I'm coming in. So a typical VC who'll write a larger check, maybe not. And absolutely not. They want
No, I was thinking, is there maybe the reason you're using somewhat, I thought maybe there's some fundamental shift in how we're looking at a CTO or somebody who runs technology.
No. I'm looking at it more from a perspective of what was mandatory and what is not. Like, it's mandatory still, but again, what used to happen 3-4 years back was exactly like, even at the stages we come in, unless it's a solid product person, you're not even talking to the person. But now it's different. Like, as long as there's a domain expert, I'm interested in having that conversation.
And what happens to software engineers in all of this? The paradox is, on one end, I see conversational assistants, new types of SaaS, a lot of old SaaSes that went after specific markets dying. At the same time, I'm seeing front-end engineers build the 10th front-end framework. Is this a principal agent problem?
First question was, what happens to software engineers in all of this? I think software engineering as a profession is only going to grow for the next 5-10 years. I think it's going to become even bigger. I am not one of those who feels like software engineering at its core will be replaced by just agents or co-pilots.
My friend once told me something very interesting. He's like, code may die, but engineering will never die.
Absolutely. They're very different. Very different things. Coding and engineering are completely different aspects.
It's strange. You're very bullish. As a product person, you're very bullish on an AI agency. And I heard this quote somewhere. I'll tell you the quote. It is, today, the most amount of money will be made being a services agency, but having a product doing the work behind the scenes. This is a weird thing. Like, we never had this option a decade ago, right? Why are you so bullish on the AI agency?
I was going to answer that as part of your last question about SaaS going to zero. And I was having this amazing conversation yesterday with one of India's best ever SaaS founders, where we were both talking about the same thing, which is that one of the ways to scale a SaaS business and to maintain customer stickiness may be to build a services layer. Because that's also what builds domain expertise. That's also what builds vertical depth.
Builds relationships.
Well, more than that, you become so good about the business, about their business, about your customer's business. And actually, that's what an enterprise wants today. So I feel like this ties into a lot of the themes he's spoken about, right? That I think vertical depth, building some sort of a services consulting layer that really solidifies your vertical depth and builds the customer stickiness. And that's, I think, what a version of SaaS might look in the future. I think these are not going to be necessarily low margin businesses anymore, because you'll mix and match and these will still be 70-80% gross margin businesses.
So Aakrit, you've been an investor for the last few years. You started doing it very seriously in the last year or so. You and Mitane's from Cred have invested in my last company. You've learned plenty of lessons, I'm sure, because it's been a great market and then a bad market. Tell us some of your learnings.
Incredible, man. Especially the last 2 or 3 years. It's been just amazing to learn, and I'm in a way very thankful that I got to learn so much. I think the fundamental of it, which I was talking to you on earlier, today, was the realization for all of us as an ecosystem that way too much venture money went into the country. The ecosystem of the country just did not have the appetite to take in so much capital.
What does that mean?
The markets aren't big enough to warrant so much capital.
So there's not enough spenders for the investment money that's coming in.
Yeah, the full cycle, right? Like just think about economics or just the flow of money, which is money comes into a company builds a product, sells it to somebody, they pay them, profit gets generated, they pay it back. That paying back and the profit generation, the depth was
Didn't happen.
No, it wasn't there. Everybody overestimated it to a great degree. Now, why did this happen? Global wave, interest rates were low. So as a result, capital was cheap. So you said that, look, I'll invest and I'll invest for a long time. So it was all long term, right? The whole idea was that if I invest in 2018, the market will catch up at 25. The moment interest rates drop, that becomes a challenge because now suddenly every company is getting valued on profitability and cash flow. So that's one. The second, which is a little bit more maybe contrarian to some degree and something I've really been spending a lot of time thinking about is, so if you think about pure venture, VC, and look at last 50, 70 years, right from when Silicon Valley started, this was the reason for VC to exist. You will bet on an early stage technological innovation. You will give it some seed money, then maybe you will give it more money till the point the technology reaches a stage where it just takes off and there's inflection.
Inflection means like suddenly the numbers start going up.
Let's take the idea of a social network, right? You'll go few colleges, 5 colleges, this, that, but then it won't be a linear growth curve. It'll be hockey stick once you open up countries. Cab booking sort of can be similar. Content, social, all these plays, right? In India, most consumer companies have been online versions of offline businesses, which don't have what you call a technological innovation of some type.
Got it. So they anyway skipped the original thesis of venture capital.
Right? Now, but if you invest venture money, you want them to have hockey stick growth.
You want them to make 1,000 crores in revenue.
No. 1,000 crores in revenue will happen. It's the inflection point growth. You want every business to follow that pattern, but that's not possible. It's inherently the business model cannot allow that. The only difference between, let's say, an offline store selling home decor and an online website selling home decor is just the touch point. You're paying rent offline, you're paying CAC online, customer acquisition costs, the tax to Google and Facebook. But otherwise, it's the same. The same consumer is buying it. Sure, convenience can be debated, but it's not that much. It's the same wallet that the money is going out from. So how does it make any difference? So, and where will that business ever find an inflection point? What's going to happen suddenly overnight? There's no technology innovation. It's not as if you're building something new or in the core product that one day is going to reach a point where suddenly everybody will buy it. And that, if you just think about most fintech businesses that are lending businesses, same.
So then investors lost money, saw that this didn't pan out. Now what happens? Are people going to leave the industry?
So no. So look, the conclusions are not necessarily that. Investors lost money, this didn't pan out. So there's a lot to unpack there. So first is, it's not as if investors have lost money, right? It's just that that's happened, that your valuations aren't getting marked up to the level that they are supposed to. And they are at that same point, and it's all paper anyway. It's not as if liquidity has been to that great a degree. At the same time, lots of companies have gone IPO, so there has been liquidity generated and investors have made money. So investors lost money is not accurate as of this moment. It's still waiting to be played out of where this goes. What happens from here on, into your question of how this changes, I think that's part of my concern, if you ask me honestly, is that even this year, as an early stage investor, we're not seeing a lot of VC behavior change.
They're still investing at super high valuations.
The valuations are still continuing to be high in a lot of cases. As a founder, maybe I don't complain, right? But wearing the investor hat, that's sometimes concerning.
I think it hurts founders many years down the line.
For sure. 100%.
Because they can't raise after that, and then you have all the expectations sitting
Boss,
on top
I
of
feel
you.
this early stage repeat founder valuation thing is becoming a popularity contest.
Can you explain that for the audience?
Basically, what's happening is that I am this founder. I sold my last company for this price, so I should get my next company this much money at this valuation. And that's becoming like a scoreboard I'm tracking against everybody else.
Is it happening often?
Very often. It's a reality. Nobody talks about it.
So your valuations are dependent on what you did in the past and very little on the merit of the current business. Because these are all pre-product companies.
Correct. It's all driven through a lot of like ego and like I said, just, I need to get this much money because this is what I deserve. And obviously, VC, even the VCs will admit it. Even I admit it as an early stage investor. Sometimes it's driven by FOMO, right? That, okay, look, these are some solid founders. Somebody else is backing them. What if I miss out? 25, 30, 35 million valuations for repeat founders, operators is still becoming common, which doesn't make sense to me. Some of these will work out, but a lot of them won't. And just the thesis doesn't make sense because at the end of the day, if the business is still an offline store, I don't get it. There's something that maybe I'm missing, but I don't get it. It's not venture.
How would you fix this?
I think fixing is always happens through learning. Everybody will learn over a period of time. Either what I am saying.
But you're saying VC behavior is not changing. They should have. I mean, it's been now some time, right?
Yeah. Eventually, at some point it will. And at some point things will change. At some point, or maybe they won't. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe there'll be lots of these companies that'll get built. Everybody will make a lot of money. But to me, this doesn't feel like what we see in its original essence should and can be. See, why do you think the Valley is so crazily excited about AI, right? Because it represents true VC.
It represents newness.
It represents saying that, look, now there's going to be a bunch of companies who are going to build pure technology. Right? And if it works at some point, it will take off. There's hardly any examples of businesses like those in India. Just go back 12 years, 13 years. One maybe, or two maybe, that you can think of that tugged along, and was building a great product. And then at one point just took off because of an event or because of a point.
And you've been pretty vocal. You had a tweet on this, that if you're from India, don't listen to Y Combinator advice.
Because the rules don't apply, right? So just hear what I said. Y Combinator is giving advice towards the business model which is you build technology innovation and at some point it scales. All of the advice is towards that. In India, those businesses don't exist. In India, you're building day-to-day linear businesses where you have to worry about very different problems. So it's not that Y Combinator advice is bad, and it's not that I'm for something. It's just factual, which is that the Indian market or the Indian business doesn't lend itself to that advice. The biggest Y Combinator advice is what? Focus on one thing at a time. Just let's think about the largest companies that have been built over the last 7, 8, 10 years. They didn't.
Kunal Shah once said this, that focus in India is a curse. No. If you build, the problem is the market sizes in each of these segments are not big enough.
Also the nature of business. See, focus is important if I was going to build a foundational LLM, I can't do anything else. I should only be doing that. But if I'm building, back to that example, a home decor brand or something in that, I absolutely have to do multiple categories. Otherwise, I'm not even going to get the customer in the door. And it's a very different nature of business. Follows very different paths, right? Honestly, right? And this is something that's super different from what I used to think when I came back. And I spent time in the Valley. I used to be very different from what I'm talking about right now. Even the culture of companies has to be different. I don't necessarily think that each business can command, I'm going to build a transparent, freedom-driven culture.
What does that mean?
If some businesses are very operationally intense, it's not possible to quote unquote give like this liberalized freedom-driven culture. You have to show up every single day, do a daily stand-up.
Otherwise the business doesn't work.
On your key metrics, every single day, you have to micromanage that as a founder. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we didn't talk about much today, but something that I rarely talk about, but it's become a core part of my DNA, just vicariously what I've learned through Reliance. It's the largest business India has ever created, right? And just look at their playbook. It's all intensely operationally heavy businesses that they go into.
But does talent hate that more than working at a freedom YC type company?
Might. But the first point of it is that the first starting point is you have to be clear. What talent hates more is mismanaged expectations.
So if you're clear on day one that this is going to be operationally intensive, that's the only way this business runs.
And I micromanage, or this is how we work. I mean, there's some absolutely phenomenal talent today that works at Reliance because they're clear about it, right? They're clear that this is how we work. And here's what we get in return. What we get in return is look, scale and all this opportunity and all of that. So it depends. It's choices. But I think there's a lot, right? That goes back to this Y Combinator thing, that it's just very, very different, the nature of markets and what you're building. I really wish one day we can build a TikTok out of India for the world. I really wish we can build.
We've not built once. I mean, I tried and failed, but it's not even one social media platform out of India. The unit economics don't make sense.
No, I think beyond even social media, right? Like whether it's foundational tech, whether it is semiconductors, whether anything, right? Like foundational core tech.
It requires a VC to really bet big money on something that might not work out.
Absolutely. Big money, small money. It requires founders to go in that direction. It requires media to support it. There's so many things come, right? A smart.
What do you mean media to support it?
Last time we were talking to somebody about this in the US. I was talking to US VC about this. We were having a similar conversation. And he was like, guys, you are sitting next to IIT Bombay, which I know has some of the brightest kids in the world. Are you telling me that all of them on graduating are going to build another SaaS workflow application and another D2C brand? Not saying those are not good to build, but there's so much more they can build. Right? Let's think of climate tech, such a large problem. I think we spoke about this once upon. There's so much to build there. There's so much to do. Why are there not more kids trying to build foundational models? We'll see where that goes. But, it's very easy to say these things. But to answer your earlier point about media, the society and the environment we live in doesn't make it easy for us.
So you want the media to celebrate people taking big risks instead of, laughing at them?
I don't think media laughs at people taking big risks, but media definitely glorifies funding, valuation above other things. And again, it's not their fault. It's what we click on. It's what you and I also click on. So I think it's a full cycle, right? Like it eventually, it'll have to come through just lots and lots of things changing over a period of time. But by the way, Varun, I'm right now not saying for or against that we should change. I'm not saying that. I'm not necessarily
You're saying that you would like to see this?
I'm saying that for the nature of work that we're doing in India today, which can all be very large businesses, they can all be 1,000 crore businesses. The classic venture model is not what I think is the right model.
And you were saying something about the classic venture model, right? You were saying that as a business, today you're either a SaaS business or a services business or a consultancy or a content business. These are all seen as different things. But you were saying, a few minutes ago that this is useful because you need to raise money. You need to fit into somebody's like every VC has a thesis, right? Some document they've written about a space. You need to fit that thesis, at least loosely. But you were saying that almost every large founder who's gotten to a certain scale is now thinking, should I add a services layer? Should I add a consultancy layer? Should I add a content layer? They're thinking like Reliance, like a conglomerate in a way. Why are smaller businesses not thinking like that?
See, look, there are many complicated nuances around all of this. And the answer lies in nuance, which is, I wanted to give you an example of a company called Nuance. So there was a company called Nuance, which was basically building speech software. They were the gold standard in speech. So automated telephony.
In India?
Global. US company, not an Indian company. They were the gold standard in speech. They started in the early 90s. They were a public company. They got acquired by Microsoft 4 years back in, I think, 12 billion public company acquisition. But here's where I'm going with this. It's a software product company, out and out. There's no doubt about that. If you look at their website, what Microsoft bought it for, the way they got traded, everything. I spent a lot of time looking at the company because we were in AI and all of...
to buy it or to invest?
No. To look at it as a inspiration for what they've built, right? Very large business, many years, hundreds of millions of dollars and so on. So I looked at it a lot. So in the public company, so I looked at the financials. 84% of Nuance's revenue was professional services.
So they're an agency.
With product doing a great work. Margins coming from the fact that product can optimize it. So why smaller businesses don't do this or can't do this lies again, if you're back to all the things we're summing up over here, right? That if you want to get venture funded, there has to be a certain direction to follow. But maybe venture funding may not be right for your business and to serve the customer that you want. So you have to make those choices as a founder.
But I've noticed this, right? When raising capital, that you go to a VC, they want you to fit into a thesis. You can't go and say, I will build SaaS and then I'll build a services layer on top and then I'll build a content layer to bring in traffic. It seems too complicated. They're like, hey, there's a playbook. So YC has this, right? I think most founders have spoken about this in SaaS, which is the triple, double. First year you grow 3x, second year you grow 3x again.
And then
then 2 times each. But many of these VCs say, hey, that's the playbook. You have to follow that playbook. Now, India SaaS, very few winners. You guys are one of them, right? But I've found that, like Kunal said, focus is a curse in India, where if you're building just one vertical, you're building a home decor brand that's only focused on, let's say, mattresses. I'm just giving you an example. That's not good enough. You got to go broad. But that's not a story VCs will buy.
Yeah. And that's where I think they need to change. To be fair, like some of that is changing, right? So to be fair, in India particularly, a lot of people are now moving away from this idea that, okay, only focus on that. I think because that shift is happening quickly because they're seeing companies the way they've evolved and grown, especially public companies.
Apart from this, what is one insight you've gotten as a founder after being a VC yourself? What is something now you do differently as a founder because you've also been a VC?
I care a lot more about dilution.
You care a lot more about dilution. Why?
I think as an investor, early stage investor, I've learned to see that, look, if I invest this much, then this company will raise next this much. And I can see a path that by the time this is 6-7 years in, the founders will own so much.
And they lose motivation?
No, it's up to each founder.
But why do you care about dilution then?
So it's up to each. I'm telling you, my personal learning is that because now I've seen that observation across hundreds of companies and I've seen what the average dilution or the percentage holding ends up at after 3-4 rounds of capital. That's what it's taught me, that I need to be a lot more careful as a founder as I think about my construct of cap table, because the averages are this much.
What does the average come down to after 4-5 rounds for a founder?
After a set of founders, right? So after, Series C, right? Broadly, the founding team is at about somewhere between 30 and 40 points.
So if each of them, if 3 co-founders split 3 ways, that's 10% each?
15 maybe. 40, 45 to Series C. I think by the time your unicorn is down to a third.
So Aakrit, I want to do 3 hot takes with you. I want to end this with 3 hot takes, right? Number 1, you've had a massive health transformation, right? And
fun.
You've dropped quite a bit of weight. In one line, what's the secret?
Extreme perseverance, which I think my founder life taught me. But the real secret is, much like a founder, you have to have a moment where you're shit scared.
Second hot take. Is there a potential that the phone itself becomes, or the phone OS, like an Android, becomes the assistant interface? Like, I mean, I know phones are already using AI behind the scenes. For example, OnePlus, they use something called the Trinity engine to do RAM allocation. Do you feel like the OS itself is going to be a chat assistant, like you just talk to this, and then it just displays what you want?
Yes, but I think there's going to be versions of it. I think it's a UX problem more than a technology problem. I think maybe what you're imagining is we're sitting over here and you're just, the device is down there and you're saying, hey, OnePlus, book me a cab right now. I don't think that happens, right? I don't think so. But I think, can you pick up the device and then maybe your default interface opens into a chat interface and you basically say, find me an Uber, and then an Uber app opens? That I think is more real.
Interesting. That's
a UX problem, right? And I'll tell you why. Look, you and I are sitting, talking to a phone and telling it to book a cab is odd. It's like socially awkward.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a question of technology. You just think it's really odd. And imagine if I'm sitting alone somewhere, if I'm sitting alone outside on the desk, I'm talking to my phone, people are going to walk around.
For a long time, putting your phone in front of your face, taking a selfie was considered socially awkward.
That's true.
What's an AI tool you use right now? How do you integrate AI in your personal life, apart from the ChatGPT?
I was telling somebody else the other day that I think I need a tool to manage my ChatGPT.
What does that mean?
like I have so many threads on ChatGPT because I use it so extensively that I need something that manages it really well. So as much as you would want a more extravagant answer, my answer is ChatGPT and ChatGPT only. I just use it as a phenomenal search tool.
And it's also a great sparring partner.
It's not so much sparring. I just think it's phenomenal at search. I just think it's phenomenal at, and plus, see, like from what I do at work, there's a lot of email writing. There's a lot of fact finding. There's a lot of research involved in what other companies are doing, what the market looks like. Just everything. It just makes it so simple. Creates your threads, stacks your threads, does so much.
And do you use ChatGPT on the phone?
Yeah. I use video, voice, all of those. I use ChatGPT voice. That's amazing.
Use it often?
Voice less so. Mostly text. Again, it just becomes a great partner. I'm trying to think about, if I can give you one more. A smaller version of an AI tool that I use right now is, basically transcription over Zoom calls. Summarizing.
Like a Firefly that just gives you, even Loom does this pretty well.
There's a company called Win, which is an Israeli tech company that I'm familiar with. So we use that. It summarizes your documents, sends you meeting notes, sends everything. That becomes very useful for me, right?
So last question, you've been seeing a lot of companies, right? 2 or 3 ideas you're very excited about, especially in AI, which you might invest in. Because this is like a small segue for the audience to probably reach out to you or ping you and say, Aakrit, I'm building this.
I would still love to take another bet on the Jarvis. Some version of that has to exist. I don't know what version of that, but some version of my original worldview of Haptik personal assistant today has to exist. I'm not sure if you saw the tweets the
But
other
do you think
day.
OpenAI will win that?
No, I think there's some version of it which is more functional, right? OpenAI is going to win the search game. I think that's what it's going to. But I think there'll be some versions of like actually completing tasks or versions of tasks. So I think something on those lines. The couple of guys in India are trying it at some scale. I think that's something I get very excited about. The second is I feel like what's going to happen is there's going to be these make every interface conversational type tools. Where let's say I'm a SaaS product offering it to my customers. I have my product, I have my data, I want to make it conversational. How do I do a plug and play? So there's a lot of companies going at it, but I haven't found the sweet spot of where this actually fits very well. But I think that's going to be very interesting, right? Which is plug and play ChatGPT almost, like into my product, into my interface, into my website, into my app, but something very simple, easy to do. So that's the other bit in AI. And then, you mentioned this earlier, but I'm just very excited about AI in education at large.
What do you think it's going to look like?
Especially in schools.
What do you think it's going to look like?
I think it's going to be Copilot for teachers to start with. That has to happen. It's already happening, but it will happen very quickly at scale. It's why not? It'll just make so much. It'll make teachers' lives better. Education.
Do you think it's going to be a earpiece or on their phone or glasses?
I don't think the surface will matter so much. I think if it does the job really well, it could be anything. It could even be just a normal desktop laptop to start with, right? Just it could be a phone, could be multiple versions of it. But I think that Copilot in different aspects of education, teachers, professors, for me, students, I think there's versions of that just have to happen. And I think they'll be really powerful. They'll make education much better, much more fun. So definitely, if somebody is doing something in that space, I would love to take a look. I would love to take a look at anybody who's doing anything in this space.
Interesting. Aakrit, this was an amazing conversation. I learned a lot. And I think that if there's one person who's been at this problem for so long and who's still not settled, continuing to do this, it's you. And I've always admired you from far because you won, less because of the AI part, more because you won SaaS in India in a way. So thank you so much for honoring us with your presence here. There's one ritual we undertake here on this pod. I give everyone who comes in as a guest the 1+ Open.
Oh my God. So exciting.
So by the way, you were planning to anyway get a phone, so I made your life easier.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This is awesome. This was great, Varun. Thank you so much for having me. I have by design, somewhat by design, avoided a lot of these conversations. But I know when we spoke, and the topics you wanted to talk about really covers pretty much a lot of what I've been doing in life for the last few years. It was wonderful. Thanks for having me, and thanks so much for the open conversation and the open phone.
You're welcome. That was intense. I hope you really liked that. Aakrit went all out. I learned so much. I hope you guys learned a lot as well. And I'm hoping you like, share, subscribe, and you're here for the next episode. Bye.